Good evening. I'd like to welcome everyone to the Pitt County Planning Board October meeting. To everyone that's listening to us out on cable and to the people in the audience, welcome to the Pitt County Planning Board meeting. And Ms. Tabb, I'll call it to order.
Hey, Barefoot. Here. David Davenport.
Present.
Brad Guth.
Here.
R.J. Hamby.
Here.
Ricky Hines.
Here.
Steve Little.
Here.
Tucker Moore.
Here.
Johnny Penner.
Here.
Maria Rogerson.
Here.
And Danny Smith.
Okay, thank you, Tab. Next up, we're going to have the prayer. It's going to be handled by Mr. Steve Little, and I will handle the pledge, Ricky Hines. I'll stand.
Let us pray. Our Father, we thank you, Lord, for the goodness and grace and mercy that you show unto us. We pray right now as we come to you, we just thank you for the blessings of life. We thank you for this opportunity we have to serve in this capacity as we serve our brethren in the county. Lord, we pray now that everything that is said and done in this meeting might be pleasing in your sight. All the blessings we ask in the name of Jesus. Amen.
Amen. Amen. Could we face the flag, please? Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, Mr. Little. Next up, we have the approval of the minutes of the September meeting.
So motion, Mr. Chairman.
Second. Got a motion and a second for the approvals of the September meeting minutes. All in favor, vote by saying aye. Aye. All opposed? Thank you. Mr. Rose.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, board. Tonight, we just wanted to bring you up to date with our new board members being present. On page 9 of your agenda package, you'll see that we actually have the new listing. Just to bring to your attention, we still have one vacancy. Someone was appointed. Come to find out, that person has moved outside of the county, so we'll be seeking another person for that slot. But on the screen, you can see the 3 members' names that are joining us. First is David Davenport. He's with District 5, and each one of these members will be serving a 3-year term. Steve Little is back again. He's been with us previously, so we welcome Steve back on the board. He's with District 2, north of the river. Tucker Moore is our at-large representative, and again, all have been just previous to this meeting, an orientation, and hopefully they're ready for you, Mr. Chair, with your 2 action items tonight. So with that, in our rules of procedure, of course, tonight, our meeting in October is the time we elect officers. I'd like to turn it over to the Assistant Attorney, Jordan Smith, to go through this process and assist you, Mr. Chairman, with that. Oh, thank you, Tab. The 3 members also need to be sworn in. Right. So if you'll step forward to the podium, Tab will take care of that for you, and then Jordan will be up.
Just put your hand on the Bible and raise your right hand, and you'll just repeat after me. You're fine. I state your name.
I, Steve Little,
Do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support and maintain
that I will support and maintain
the Constitution and laws of the United States
the Constitution and laws of the United States
and the Constitution and laws of North Carolina,
and the Constitution and laws of North Carolina,
not inconsistent therewith,
not inconsistent therewith,
and that I will faithfully discharge
and that I will faithfully discharge
the duties of my office
the duties of my office
as a member of the Planning Board.
as a member of the Planning Board.
So help me God.
So help me God.
Congratulations. Yeah.
Yes, congratulations, new members.
Yeah, let's see how you do now. And you're a sworn member.
Chairman. Jordan Smith, Assistant County Attorney, and as James alluded to, I'm here to assist the board in its election of officers tonight. We will begin with the selection of a chair. The ground rules are essentially any member can nominate him or herself or another member to serve as chair. Nominations don't require a second. If there are multiple nominations, we will vote in reverse order, and the highest vote getter will be the victor. Any questions about the process before opening up the floor for nominations for chair? Hearing none, are there any nominations for the office of chair?
I nominate Ricky Hines.
Any other nominations?
Motion to close on the one said name.
Second motion.
I believe we can vote on that motion and also vote on Mr. Hines as being named chair. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Seeing none, I believe Mr. Hines is chair by unanimous vote. Same rules apply for vice chair that I laid out. Any questions about the process, or open up the floor to nominations for vice chair?
I nominate Russell Hemby.
Any other nominations? Hearing none, all in favor of Russell Hemby serving as vice chair, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, I believe Mr. Hemby will be named vice chair. The last item of business I have to assist you with tonight is, by your rules of procedure, annually the planning director shall be named the executive secretary to this board. So if there can be a motion and a second and a vote to name James Rhodes as executive secretary to the planning board.
So moved.
Motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Congratulations, James.
And Mr. Chairman, we did have one other administrative item that we want to bring to the board's attention tonight. We know that we've got at least one action item for your November planning board meeting. Your third Wednesday night in November would be the Wednesday before Thanksgiving. I know a lot of you might be traveling. So in turn, we'd like to just gauge as to whether we could get a quorum here if we move that meeting date to the Tuesday night. That would be November the 20th. So, Mr. Chair, if you'd like to take a poll of folks, and if we can get that moved, we'll do the advertising on our end.
Okay, is everyone available on November the 20th? Would that be okay? Sufficient enough for everyone?
I think so.
Yeah, it's fine.
I think it's a consensus.
We'll
Jay.
get the notifications out, and again, make sure that we remind you guys as well that it'll be a Tuesday night meeting. Thank you for that.
Thank you. All right. Okay, before, Eric, you step up, I'd just like to recognize Commissioner Colson is in the audience with us today. All right, thank you for being here. Come up.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We do have one rezoning request for you tonight. The request is by Lever and Russell Real Estate, LLC. The request is rezone 8.127 acres located on the northern side of Frog Level Road. This is northwest of its intersection with US 13 Dickinson Avenue, from rural residential to general commercial. This is the site. As you see, it is, again, northwest of the intersection. This is Dickinson Avenue and US 13. If you're heading to the west side of US 13 or the western direction on US 13, you'd be heading towards Farmville, back to the east heading into Greenville. You see the area that's outlined in red here is the actual right-of-way for the Southwest Bypass. So it is in close proximity to that. It's not near an interchange. There's not an interchange off Frog Level Road, but there is one off of 13 that's in proximity to. And then the sort of light blue and pink color you see on the screen is the city of Greenville's planning jurisdiction. This is a picture of the property as you see the road frontage off Frog Level Road. There's an existing utility easement that runs along the eastern side of the property that you see here. This is looking towards the southwest or southeast back towards 13. And then the other direction is if you're heading back towards the southwest bypass, that new overpass there on Frog Level Road. This is an existing residential property that's adjacent to this. It's pretty much the only residential property on this section of Frog Level Road. There's an existing commercially zoned property there. There's an existing auto parts salvage yard there that is not entirely in compliance with our zoning ordinance now that we're going to be beginning probably to take some action on, but that property there is zoned general commercial. Then this is also Oxford Park, this is the entrance to Oxford Park off of Frog Level Road. It's an existing commercial development there at the corner of Frog Level Road and US 13. As of Monday night, the Southwest Bypass land use plan was approved, and so this area is within that area. The comprehensive land use plan was amended along with that. In your package, in your staff reports that you have in front of you, we do reference the Southwest Bypass land use plan in the notes, but the description in the staff report was based off the comprehensive land use plan. So as of Monday night, it is the Southwest Bypass land use plan that applies. So that comprehensive land use plan will now refer back to this. So in your staff report, I think it says it was suburban residential. The land use designation is actually now industrial, is what is called for in that Southwest Bypass plan. So as you see on the screen, the purple area is the industrial. The area along Dickinson Avenue and where Oxford Park is commercial. And then the brown towards the bottom here is mixed use. But the area in question for where this site is in the industrial category. As per that land use plan, the subject property again is designated as industrial. That area contains employment generating industrial uses such as warehouses, light manufacturing, and multi-tenant flex spaces. And should be located in those areas within highway access. The Southwest Bypass plan, unlike the comprehensive plan, the Southwest Bypass plan has what we call a crosswalk table, which sort of cross-references what the land use category is and whether a certain district or zoning district is compatible in that district. So you see highlighted the industrial district. If you scroll over to the general commercial, you see that in that category it's listed as rezoning may be appropriate, but only if compatible with the neighborhood and the surrounding uses. And again, we feel like with the location of the general commercial zoning with Oxford Park and also along US 13 as well as just to the west of the property that it is compatible with those areas. So this is the existing land use. You see predominantly in that area it is undeveloped or agricultural. It's mainly woods land. There is the commercial with some institutional industrial at the Oxford Park area. There's some residential that is now located on the other side of the Southwest Bypass, so that is sort of a buffer there. And then there's the commercial land use to the west. When you look at the zoning, you see again general commercial to the west of the property, as well as commercial in Oxford Park. The current zoning of the property is rural residential. And all the surrounding properties immediately adjacent to it are residential as well. Being that the city's in such close proximity, when you overlay also the city zoning designations on the property, you see there are also a significant amount of heavy commercial that's also within the area. So pretty much everything on the north side of Dickinson Avenue up to and just past the Frog Level Road intersection, as well as areas on the south side of US 13. Again, it's in the city's jurisdiction, but that is also heavy commercial zoning, so it's also compatible with that zoning designation. So again, the general commercial district is intended to accommodate a range of retail, service, office, limited wholesale, and moderate density multifamily residential uses in those areas that have access to major thoroughfares and the utilities to support such development. Staff does find that the request is consistent with the Southwest Bypass land use plan, again, given its designation as industrial and its proximity to the existing commercially zoned properties, not only in Oxford Park, but along US 13 and to the west on Frog Level Road. We also find that the request is reasonable and in the public interest because there's very limited residential development in the surrounding area, and the site is suited for commercial or light industrial development due to its proximity to Oxford Park and the Southwest Bypass. So staff does recommend approval of the request from rural residential to general commercial. We'd like to entertain public comments by the board at this time. The board will then make a recommendation to the Board of County Commissioners. They're scheduled to hold a public hearing on November 19th. That'll be held at 6:00 p.m. And one difference with the November 19th meeting is that the county commissioners, they usually meet in this room. And on the 19th, they'll be meeting at the Ag Center. So we'll make sure in our notices to the public that we specify that new location so that they're aware of it. So with that, I'd like to entertain any public comments, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Before we open up the public hearing, just like to say this. You have 3 minutes to speak, and when you come up, please state your name and your address. Can open it up for public hearing now.
Good evening, board members. Ken Malpas. I'm representing Russell and Lever on this property. It's anticipated there's only about 4.5 acres that's not within the wetlands, so we anticipate having 2 lots to be cut off and to be developed similar to what Oxford Park is as far as a building and parking and that type of environment. But don't anticipate any roads because there's not enough usable land. I think you can see the wetlands on the property. It's actually 15 acres total, but we only rezoning 8, but only 4.5 of that is actually usable property. So it's a very small area that we're requesting to be rezoned. Be glad to answer any questions you might have.
Anyone have any questions, Sean? Thank you. Mr. Blackwood, is a call.
My name's Carl Blackwood. I live in Fall at 4542 May Court. I'm representing Judge John B. Lewis and myself. We own property that's directly across from the proposed rezoning. Some of my questions may sound kind of like a poor dirt farmer because I am, but all of you look like protagonists in your profession, so I certainly appreciate anybody rephrasing my questions. I won't be offended at all. My first question would be, what, if this is rezoned general commercial, what zoning would be combatant to that? If I got property across the road, what is it going to kind of restrict me to? That would be my first question, and I recognize that y'all are not the county commissions, but rather a planning board, but I would appreciate any responses to that question. The second question would be, I like examples, and I'd like examples of limited wholesale. So if you've got limited wholesale inside this zoning, what would be some examples of, say, if I want to put a nursing home across the road, where would I lie? They're my questions. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'll try to answer a couple of Mr. Blackwood's questions. In terms of, I think he said, what zoning would it restrict his property to? His property would currently be zoned RR. And Mr. Blackwood, if I could just get confirmation of which property is yours, is which?
You want me to point it out?
Yes, sir, if you don't mind.
Where's yours?
This is the property that's being rezoned.
Right here.
Okay, this one here. Okay.
It's all woodsland.
Okay. So his property is currently zoned rural residential. This rezoning wouldn't preclude any sort of rezoning for his own property. That would be reviewed on its own merits based off the land use plan. So it would just depend on what type of zoning he was requesting as to whether it be appropriate in the industrial category for the Southwest Bypass Plan. In terms of examples of limited wholesale, I don't have any off the top of my head, but I would think if Mr. Malpas is talking about development consistent with what's in Oxford Park, those are primarily metal buildings. There's some wholesale. I know Greenville Produce, I think, is back there. Ferguson, the plumbing supplier, is back there. There's some other service-related type industries in there. I would think it would be fairly similar to that. Again, though, this rezone is for just a general zoning district, so it's not conditional, so we can't hold him to that description. But the types of uses that you see in Oxford Park, I think we would consider a limited wholesale or warehousing type of use.
All right, thank you. Any questions? Anybody have any questions?
And just say, I'll be glad to meet with Mr. Blackwood after the meeting or tomorrow in our office, and we can certainly sit down with them and discuss some possibilities for his property as well, too.
Mr. Blackwood?
Yes.
Would that be okay, meet with Eric and talk about what, possibility for your property?
I'd appreciate that opportunity, but I'd also like to hear your opinions on what would be compatible in terms, if I wanted to request zoning. In other words, I don't want to necessarily be limited to the same zoning that he has, but I'm not smart enough to know if that's part of the game plan or not.
Okay.
Well, I would just say, and again, I don't want to get too far off track from this case, but again, if I go back to the crosswalk table, if I can find it here, in the industrial category, which is what this property also falls under, it says that general commercial and heavy commercial may be appropriate, and also general industrial and light industrial are likely appropriate. So any of those categories would be consistent with the land use plan. So any kind of commercial category would likely be consistent.
Okay.
So, but again, we'd have to evaluate that.
Right. Once he puts forth something, then we can go from there.
Correct.
I mean,
Yes,
it's
sir.
kind of hard to kind of tell you anything right now unless
And
we
this
know.
rezoning doesn't affect that at all?
No, sir. No. So any kind of information I give right now would be purely speculative.
Right. So, okay, so what is the pleasure of the board?
Motion to approve, Mr. Chairman.
Second that motion.
Okay, have a motion and a second to approve the plan. All in favor, vote by saying aye. Aye. All opposed? Okay, motion carried. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Mark?
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the Planning Board. My name is Mark Nottingham. I'm a planner with Pitt County. Tonight we have one preliminary plat for your review. It's Kensall Place West, Section 2. So some locational information. It's located on Kensall-Wilby Road, just north of its intersection with Bell Arthur Crossing Drive. It's 35 lots on approximately 31 acres. There's a map so you can kind of get your bearings of where this site's located. It's west of the City of Greenville's planning jurisdiction, south of 264, and north of US 13. And some of you members may remember previous plats that have come to you before, a couple months ago. This site is located west on the screen, across from the other two parcels, Kensall-Wilby Road. And you should have a preliminary plat in your packet. Kind of gives you the layout of the subdivision. Some general site information. It's not located in the 100-year floodplain AE zone. It's zoned rural residential, minimum of 25,000 square foot lot size. The streets are proposed as private, and electricity is to be provided by GUC and water by Bell Arthur Water Corporation. So now we'll go on to some conditions and requirements. They are part of the technical review committee's favorable recommendation for this plat. Flagpole portion of lot 34 should be at least 40 feet wide. The flood insurance map and panel number should be updated and along with the date and note number 6. The streets are proposed as private, and the subdivider is responsible for constructing and maintaining these streets and the right-of-way improvements until the roads are transferred to an HOA. A HOA shall be incorporated to provide for the maintenance of these private subdivision streets prior to the final plat approval. And a soil erosion and sedimentation control plan and construction plan are also be required. As far as the street names, Kimball Drive and Kimberlin Drive are too similar to be used in the same development, so one name will have to be chosen and another one proposed and accepted. No stormwater BMPs are required, and the development of the tract shall proceed in conformity to all the plans submitted as part of the stormwater permit application, and the stormwater administrator may approve minor changes if they're consistent with the plan. Engineering's conditions were to verify the initial curve on Kimball Drive meets NCDOT design standards. We did get confirmation that it does. And another one was to label lot number 11 as lot number 11 and also label it as non-buildable. Environmental Health requested that the fields be cleared to allow for the septic evaluations, and during construction of the roads and stockpiling of soils, the heavy equipment should avoid pros system and repair areas to avoid compaction of the soil. GUC requested to add 10-foot electrical easement along the back of the right-of-way, and if Bell Arthur Water is putting meters in the easement to make sure the electrical easement is 15 feet. The pros roads and driveways are going to require driveway permits, and the roads are proposed private, so they will not be eligible for DOT maintenance in the state maintained system. Here's some site pictures. This is looking out over the site from Kensaw-Willoughby Road. And this is the view looking south back towards existing residential neighborhood on the right and also towards Bell Arthur Road. This is a view across, basically taken from where the proposed entrance to the subdivision would be, looking out over what will be Kensaw Place East. This is a view looking back north with the subject property on your left, just past the existing residential. Adjacent property owners have been notified and we have not received any responses. And the technical review committee did review this plan last week, and they recommended conditional approval. So as, for your action tonight, it requires administrative action, meaning that if the plat meets the requirements of the subdivision ordinance, then it must be approved. So you can take two actions: approve the preliminary plat with conditions to meet the requirements of the subdivision ordinance, or disapprove the plat if any standards set forth from the subdivision ordinance are not met. And you can also open up for public comments.
Okay, we're going to open it up for public comments. We have down Ms. Strickland, Catherine.
Hi, my name is Catherine Strickland. I live at 1928 Bell Arthur Crossing Drive. I don't know if you can see that on your map. The cul-de-sac runs east to west. I'm at the very west end of it. My concern is the flooding of my yard. I am in parcel 81326. I don't know if you can see that. The cul-de-sac currently slopes down from east to west, and like I said, I'm at the very western end. This parcel, my yard, it borders most of the southern border of this proposed neighborhood. The field that this neighborhood is going to be built in, it actually slopes up quite a bit. So all that water runs down into my yard. There is only one drainage ditch on the western side of my yard. It cannot even handle the water that comes right now. It is eroding my yard away. I have about a 5-foot in diameter hole around the drainage ditch that's currently there. The ditch, when it gets closer to Bell Arthur Road and it turns to the left, it's full of debris and trees and limbs and such, and so the water has nowhere to go. It backs up into my side and backyard, and it basically creates a pond in my yard and my neighbor's front yard. It takes a few hours after the rain has stopped for it to go anywhere. The builder, who is the same builder that's going to build the homes now, he put a swell in my front yard. It does nothing but hold water. It takes several days for that water to drain, and that water backs up so much that it meets the water in my backyard. So my fear is, and my driveway is also eroding due to all the flood water. My fear is that when he builds these houses back there in that field that sits above my yard, that this extra water is going to have nowhere to go, and it's going to be coming down further into my yard. There is no ditch along that southern line. I don't know if building a ditch would help it, but there is not currently one there. I don't know if it's in the plans, but something is going to have to be done. During Hurricane Matthew, the water was within a few feet of my home. And I mean, we're not in the flood zone, so I mean, we shouldn't be having that issue. But that is my main concern with it. Thank you.
We also have, I don't even know how to pronounce your name without butchering it. Igor?
My name is Igor Polivoda. I represent Baldwin Design Consultants. We're working on the construction plan for this project. As far as Ms. Strickland's comments, we'll have to look closely at her property and see if we can maybe regrade the problematic ditch, because I know we have to regrade one of them anyway. And but anyway, we'll just have to see if we can maybe regrade the ditch along the southern property line to see if it could alleviate the drainage problems that she's experiencing. And that's all I have right now. Unless you have any other questions.
Yeah. Anybody have any questions for either Mr. Strickland or?
No doubt, Ms. Strickland has a genuine concern. So I'm just curious, didn't I hear earlier that there were no comments made when this was brought out to start with? There was no comments?
I don't recall getting anything that...
Could you step, please?
The only thing that I ever got was a letter in the mail last week telling me about this meeting. And I thought this was the time to come and do it. I didn't know there was any other way, or I would have.
And no doubt, you got I think, a genuine concern, so.
It's horrible. I mean, my yard is eroding away.
All right. Thank you. Any more questions? Anybody else have any questions? Hope.
I just have a question for anybody in the in the planning department. Have y'all had any complaints prior, or are there any concerns that this drainage ditch needs to be cleaned out prior to the development being completed?
No, ma'am, we have not received any comments prior to this about that drainage ditch, or I have not. The only other drainage complaint in close proximity that we got, I don't know if you can see on the eastern parcel on the map, up here, I think there's existing homeowners that were concerned about this ditch right here already backing up.
Mm-hmm.
And the development's not going to, the new development's not going to fix, existing drainage issues. what they're responsible for and what our engineers review their drainage calculations when they submit it with the soil erosion construction plan to make sure that the post-development peak flow and a 10-year storm will not exceed the pre-development peak flow from a 10-year storm. If that makes any sense.
That's peak flows though, but
Yeah.
I mean, that's not necessarily quantity.
Right.
So, that's my concern, if there's a need to go up and down this ditch and at least clean it out. I know there's certain limitations, being a blue line stream, what they can and cannot do, but that may be something that needs to be looked at.
Mr. Henry?
Yeah, my question only was that you're saying that the future development will not impact this property as she's asked that it would or would not. You're saying that this new development would not impact her in this negative form as she's talked about?
No, we can't say that. The only thing that's required is, what I said about peak flow, in a 10-year storm event.
Okay, so what's the pleasure of the board? Mr. Rose?
Mr. Chairman, one other thing, and again, we went over this at the orientation session earlier. The technical requirements are what they are. However, we certainly can take this forward onto the construction plan, and if it's the board's pleasure, they can add a condition that this area, as the representative from Baldwin Associates mentioned, they can take a look at this. So what I would recommend is adding another condition that the runoff in that particular area, and specifically also the existing ditch, make sure that that is capable of handling the runoff that is proposed on this site. And again, in doing that, that also alleviates any additional water coming over onto Mrs. Strickland's property. So you can probably word it a little bit better than that, but certainly when we get the engineers involved and looking at all the stormwater runoff calculations and other information, soil erosion measures, that would be the appropriate time to look at that. So it would be nice to have that as a condition. If that plan didn't come in until 18 months from now, we would have that condition to go back to and make sure it's taken care of.
So we can approve, I'm just asking, we could approve the plat with certain conditions.
With the additional condition.
With conditional.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Okay.
That's right.
So everybody kind of hear that?
Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve the preliminary plat with the additional conditions that our concerns are addressed, okay? That we do see where that runoff of water is going to be.
Okay.
Okay.
Got a motion?
Second?
Got a motion and a second that we approve the preliminary plat with the conditions set forth. All in favor, vote by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion's carried.
Thank you.
Eric, I'm sorry.
Here tonight to give you our monthly progress update on the Southwest Bypass Corridor. As I mentioned during the rezoning, at the October 15th meeting, the commissioners did vote unanimously to adopt the Southwest Bypass Land Use Plan, as well as to amend the future land use map in the 2030 Comprehensive Land Use Plan. So again, that area, particularly in the area where we were dealing with tonight, in the Frog Level Road, that whole Southwest Bypass study area, in the future land use map of the CLUP, that's going to be grayed out from now on, and we'll refer over to the Southwest Bypass. So that will be the official future land use map for that whole study area. Also, one thing that the board also took action on was they amended the comprehensive land use plan, the mailed notice provisions that are in the plan, because what we figured out was when we changed the future land use map, we would have had to notify by first-class mail everybody within that study area, and it would have cost the county probably about $1,000 or so in postage. We also would have had to notify everybody within 100 feet of that whole boundary. So what the commissioners did in that action was they amended it so that that mail notice provision does not apply to studies, large-scale planning studies like the Southwest Bypass Plan. So in those instances, what we'll do is we'll have additional published notice. So we'll post an additional notice in the paper as well as on the county website. And then we also, for those cases where they have mail notice, we've changed it so that mail notice is only required in conjunction with a rezoning request, because the intent was really only for just like a handful of parcels at most. So in those instances where mail notice is required, the ordinance required 100 feet, and we've bumped that up to 500, so that's also consistent with our rezoning request as well. So, so again, for those mail notices, they'll have additional notice requirements, and then for the published, for those actions like with the South Bypass, we'll have additional published notice to get the word out a little bit more. So the next steps in this whole process, again, will be to basically update the Pitt County zoning ordinance to try to implement the policies that are in that plan. So some of the things we'll be looking at, and this board will be seeing probably within the next few months, is some new or modified zoning districts or overlays, some design standards for mixed use and neighborhood commercial areas, maybe some additional gateway standards. We know those interchanges are going to be gateways into Greenville and Winterville and Ayden in particular. So some additional sort of design standards for the type of uses that are going to be coming there. Some zoning requirements, particularly for the Rinston Historic District. Again, it's a nationally registered, or it's on the national register as a historic landmark, but we don't have a local designation. So it's just subject to the requirements of the zoning ordinance as it is right now. And so we're looking to probably do an overlay or some additional requirements to help preserve that area and that agricultural area. Then also probably some enhanced screening requirements, particularly along the bypass. Some conservation design standards, so that'll be in those areas that have some maybe environmental limitations. They could do a smaller lot size, but still have the same amount of density overall in terms of development, but also have a little more open space associated with it. Also some tree preservation and buffering and landscaping standards. Outdoor advertising standards, those are the billboards. The county requirements for billboards are already pretty stringent on freeway locations. We don't allow billboards at all, but the plan actually encourages particularly Greenville and Ayden, our municipal partners, to sort of beef up their standards as well to make it a little more consistent. Then also trying to implement a few more lighting standards, particularly in the southern end of the study area. We've got Time for Science, which has a lot of programs that depend on a dark sky. They do astronomy and those sorts of things. So they need that dark sky. They don't need a lot of light pollution from development that occurs around there. So we'll be looking at doing that too. And so with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions that anybody might have about that.
Anyone have any questions for Eric about the Southwest Bypass?
Have any of the other municipalities adopted the plan as of yet?
They have not. I think the intent is probably Winterville and Ayden are getting ready to kick off their land use plan, and they're going to update both of their comprehensive land use plans as well. I think the intent is to sort of roll these recommendations into those plans and those processes, so they'll have them adopted under their own policies.
Yep. Well, thank you. Okay. Mark.
So a quick update on some Hurricane Florence damage assessments. Pitt County staff went out with soil and water staff along with building inspections and engineering right after the hurricane, and we started on September 24th, went through October 2nd using a smartphone-based app to do damage assessments on structures. What you see on the screen is kind of a dashboard assessment, what it looks like when we went out there and inspected a structure. We went to 87 structures, kind of based it on areas where people apply for assistance after Hurricane Matthew, and also in the Grifton community. And due to the storm surge from Florence, we went down Clark's Neck Road as well. So 65 of the structures didn't have any damage at all. About 20 of them had minor damage, and that could be anything from, water in the ductwork to some minor wind damage, missing shingles, that kind of thing. A couple of them did have moderate damage. We're going to use this information going forward. The state emergency management usually comes out with recovery programs, so this will help kind of gauge where we need to concentrate, those kind of efforts and programs, and where we need to notify homeowners. Any questions on that? Thank you.
Mr. Rose.
And just to wrap up a few other informational items, interlocal agreements for the Candlewick sewer project. Most of you are aware the county secured a grant, actually a 2013 grant that we're finally wrapping up on. So we've had our closeout public hearing. There were a few minor changes to our interlocal agreements. And again, we had agreements, tri-party agreement with Greenville Utilities and Candlewick Sanitary District. That, as well as our agreement between just the county and Candlewick, both of those were approved at Monday night's commissioners meeting, so we're on to finalizing this project once and for all. The good news is the homes that were slated to be connected have been connected. Actually, with one additional one, because our sounds bad, but it ended up being good. Our contractor actually nicked one of the septic system lines for those household that was not to be connected. So the contractor ended up connecting that home on their own time and dollar. So that project is currently functional. The county now is the owner of that portion, and in the near future, once we finalize everything, all the assets will be transferred over to Greenville Utilities for operation and maintenance. So with that, just for the new planning board members too, the system was built to enable additional area, has additional capacity available to allow additional areas to be tied into that sewer line. The other item here, if you haven't been out to the district park lately, you need to get out there. This is out at the county home property just across from Wintergreen School. Got a nice natural trail, and we're getting ready to add to it some outdoor pickleball courts, and I'll let you Google that to see exactly how that's played, and also an outdoor basketball court. And this is actually being dedicated in honor of Phil Dickerson, who is our former county engineer. Got a substantial donation from one of his sons, and in turn we put the court out there. It will be officially dedicated Friday, November the 2nd at 10 a.m. If you'd like to join us, we'll have an official event to unveil that whole new improvement out there on site. So I hope you can join us. Also in your package is our monthly report that goes over a number of other things, and Tab has put together several articles related to planning for your review as well. So with that, Mr. Chairman, if you do not have any questions of us, you can always visit our website too. There's a lot of information from other activities that are going on in the department, but certainly we welcome any comments that you might have.
All right. Thank you, James, and thank you and your staff for all the good work that you're doing and keeping us informed. I said we are adjourned.